Welcome to Behind the DM Screen. It is July of 2026, just barely. It's actually the 1st today. And we are two DMs talking about our games and helping each other out because both Mike and Sam were unable to join us for this episode. Mike is in the thralls of the beginnings of a Kickstarter that is consuming all of his time and energy, and Sam's got life going on. So we allowed that. So we called on our regular substitute DM, Ismael Alvarez, who is probably on the show as much as Sam or Mike is.
I'm the fifth Beatle of this operation.
That's right, the fifth Beatle of the three people show. Yes, I'd say we could include the editor as another person in the show, except that's also Sam. So
he's the fourth.
He's both the third and the fourth, and and you're the fifth. Well, hopefully not, because we don't want you to be the Yoko.
Oh boy.
So. All right. Well, we are gonna talk about our games, see how that's going, and Ish is down to as I understand it, a reasonable number of games to talk about. So we're gonna let you go first. Ish, how are your games going?
They're going okay, given that there was like a precipitous drop of the number of them that I was doing. And I'm pretty sure the last time I was on, I talked about what I contracted to. So just going through the days of the week, nothing Monday. Tuesday is, I did a really short, kind of 4-shot game of Savage Worlds Werewolf the Wild West, which actually worked fantastically, but we're then transitioning as soon as I'm done with my 2-week vacation starting this weekend. Once I come back, we'll be doing Savage Worlds Japan, and over the last couple of weeks we actually did some watch-alongs of some like classic Japanese movies. So we just got done watching A Hidden Fortress yesterday as a group. We did like a Discord, I streamed the movie to everybody and we just kind of watched it. It was real cool to get us in the headspace of that. Wednesdays is my Demon the Fallen game, and that's been going pretty good. That's the one game throughout all of this that has not discombobulated in some way. So if you would have talked to me like 3 months ago, that's the one game that still survived from then. Thursday, nothing going on. Friday, I play in a game that's like a homebrew 5e game, I think 5.5 actually, that is homebrew, but a little bit Avatar The Last Airbender, a little bit Game of Thrones, like very focused on political maneuvering. Saturday, nothing going on, although there's rumblings that someone wants to run a game and I might play in it, so that might kick me up to 5. And then Sunday is the day that I will be running a game of Break with 2 exclamation marks at the end, because we had been doing Daggerheart and that kind of ran its course. And that was always a day of the week in a group that was like, hey, we'll run a game while you're kind of getting yourself together, and if you want to run a game, then we'll suspend the Daggerheart game and do something you want. And I put out one of my famous like surveys, and they selected the Break game over everything, and I can kind of talk about that when we get to it. But that's it. I've only got 3 games that I'm running, 1 that I'm playing in, and potentially a second that I'm playing in if that gets off the ground. But the Saturday slot has been cursed because I've run a game and that didn't pan out. Someone else was going to run a mecha game and he ended up getting just busy with life. And then now we're going to try for a 3rd game and let's see if that pans out. But I'm not expecting necessarily anything to come out of it, but if something does, it would be cool.
That sounds awesome. And it sounded like 2 of your games are White Wolf, or is the werewolf one is over?
The werewolf one is over. It was just it was like an experiment on my end of, can you run Werewolf Wild West and Savage Worlds? And there was a lot of reasons that I chose that because Deadlands has had a crossover with them. The horror companion for Savage Worlds has rules for how to be a werewolf that not only do they align with the werewolves and Werewolf the Apocalypse, they actually took a quote from Werewolf the Apocalypse in the listing for the race of werewolf. So it's just, they knew what they were doing. Like they did that intentionally, I presume. But I just wanted to see, would this work? Is this a thing? And it went great. It was actually really cool. If I had my druthers in a future time, I would run a whole game just Savage Worlds, Werewolf the Apocalypse. But that's
so the other White Wolf game you got going on, the Demon the Awakening one, is that also using Savage Worlds as a system, or are you using the White Wolf system?
That one's using the White Wolf system, the storyteller system, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. I'm mostly curious because I haven't seriously thought about White Wolf in a very long time. And now I'm a dropout subscriber, and I've been watching the latest season of Dimension 20, wherein they're playing vampire.
Oh, snap. I didn't know that they were. I think we had this conversation and my brain just lost that information again. I need to watch that. I love Dimension 20.
It's called City Council of Darkness instead of Council of Darkness. They're in small town Perpy, Oregon, and trying to establish their own foothold of the Camarilla there.
Fantastic. I'm sure. I would presume that it draws on a lot of story beats from What We Do in the Shadows, if you've never seen that.
No, I've seen like half of the first episode and never really, it for whatever reason, it didn't grab me and I didn't keep watching. So
fair. But no, so shoot. Yeah, it's really weird because I'm going through this weird like midlife crisis kind of almost where it's like, hey, I used to play Rifts when I was in high school. Let's do that again. I got into World of Darkness and the storyteller system when I was right out of high school. Let's do that again. Like it's been 15, 20 years, but let's just let's do that. Let's like go back and visit those things that happened in when I was like a wee lad. But I guess starting with everything, we've got the Tuesday game, and that's Savage Worlds Japan. And I actually went out and bought like 3 books that are exactly Savage Worlds Japan. A lot of material out there for that, which I'm not breaking new ground. There's people who love, like, I think I even had to pull out my GURPS Japan copy just to do some more research. But there's so much material, so much to work from. So the preparation for that was actually a blast. And I put together a list of novels to read if the players want to read for inspiration, a list of movies, which obviously included Kurosawa, and a list of anime to watch if they wanted to, which all of it was kind of keyed towards the Edo period Japan, which is where we're running the game. But it's kind of refreshing because I spent so much of my 20s being a really corny, like, fan of Japan. You hear of Francophiles. I was definitely that way for Japan, and just spending most of my 30s trying to get away from that because it was so embarrassing. And now I can do it without being embarrassed and just being like, yay, Japan. Obviously there's a lot of nuance to, like, Japanese culture that I've internalized over 25 years. But all the players are really excited, and I think they've got the right attitude for it.
Nice.
So that's Tuesdays. Wednesdays is my Demon the Fallen game, and that one's going apace. I put out a survey for that one because we gained some players, we lost some players, there was some drama there. We're down to 3 players, and I almost canceled the game. I'm like, this is kind of weird that we are just having so much trouble keeping 4 people in this game, because in my mind that was the minimum. And the 3 players were like, can we just play with 3 people? Like, is that okay? And I was like, if you're comfortable with that. I've had a lot of people who aren't. A lot of groups who have been like, hey, if it's 3 people, we're out. Like, if it's 3 people, that's not enough. And so they were like, please, let's keep the game going. I'm like, okay, as long as everyone is fine with that, we'll keep going. We've been going just fine. I put out a survey just to make sure that the 3 people I have are happy. It was really interesting because I was worried about the pacing of the game that I was running. It's this, like, just to go back over the premise, it's you know, back during the fall of the angels, they, rebelled against heaven, got punished for it, got sent to a prison of sensory deprivation, shoot to modern day, and the prison that they were held in ruptures, and they all escape and have to possess bodies that had just recently died. And essentially, it's this amalgam of like angel and human trying to survive and make sense of the world. But I was really worried about the pacing because I thought I was going too slow. And in fact, when I put the survey out and I asked specific questions, it was like, how do you feel about combat? Do you want to see more? Do you want to see less? How do you feel about the pacing? Everybody came back and said, actually, if you could just like slow down the pacing a little bit, that would be great. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So that was invaluable data to me too, of just people being like, A, really supportive. They're like, no, this game is great and we want to see it continue, but B, like we want to really like live in this situation. We want to really like feel the characters and really take our time with it, which is refreshing. That's kind of what the storyteller system is for.
You talked a little bit about sort of the origins of the Demon Awakening, like the premise of it. What's your story about?
So I've had to change it a little bit, and some of that was based on the tumult of trying to keep players, and some of it was based on the survey data. Initially, and hopefully nobody who's in the game is listening, but if they are, cover your ears. Initially, it was meant to be this like, what if rapture happened? Like, what if the revelations and everything happened? But instead of them having to answer to God, it was more like, oh, these like Lovecraftian creatures are going to show up and try and destroy the world, and you, as these returned angels, are supposed to stop that. And it was very top heavy because it was very conceptual and very like, oh, like you're going to have to get really powerful really quickly. And so I was going to have it be this weird like Call of Cthulhu meets like, your biblical apocalypse.
Which there's not a lot of Lovecraft in the White Wolf setting traditionally, is there?
Not explicitly. There's like a lot of things that could be called Lovecraftian, especially in Werewolf the Apocalypse, but not Cthulhu, not Dagon. Although, yeah. But so that was where I was going to try and bring my flavor into it, of being like, it's not just what it is, it's what it is plus an extra element. But that, with the survey data and everything, felt like it was too much. And so I've pulled it way back to a street level. I've pulled it way back to a story about just the characters trying to be alive. The same thing happened. So the event was supposed to happen in 1999 per the original book. I moved it to 2012 because I wanted to play around with the idea of like all of the doomsday cults that were happening during 2012. There were like 6 end of the world scenarios that people were supposedly saying were going to happen.
Was that the year of the was it the Mayan calendar?
The Mayan calendar, but there were like 3 others before that, and probably some others that I wasn't aware of. I remember that summer, in fact, like in real life, I was going to like end of the world parties that, because I just thought it was hilarious. I'm like, oh yeah, Rapture's going to happen, whatever. They weren't throwing parties for the end of the world. They just happened to be parties. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna party it up. But that element of it drew me to the idea of, let's pretend the world really was ending, that there was these things happening. And so that's why I chose the time that I did. And so I think it ended up being December 26, 2012 is when the game starts, and we've got a calendar. We've only gotten to like January 3rd so far.
And are you bringing in like real world timeline and all that kind of stuff with it? So that's why the dates are important, because stuff is happening in the world.
Yes, and we've brought in some real world elements too, because there's a part of the setting where the big bad evil people are called Earthbound. They were angels or demons or whatever that were pulled out of the prison in the Middle Ages by like, cults. But they couldn't inhabit human bodies, so they had to be put into artifacts. And so you might have like the Maltese Falcon or something, but it's inhabited by this ancient evil spirit. And I had one of the artifacts be something that Hobby Lobby stole from from some museum in the Middle East, because that actually happened.
Yeah.
So I'm drawing on some real world elements for that, and just having a lot of fun with it. But yeah, just like I'm being very mindful of the things that happened in 2012, 2013, of like smartphones just barely came into existence, and there's no cryptocurrency, and there's
Right.
Twitter is relatively new, and so on. But yeah, just really playing with like making it a period piece, as it were.
Some of the themes, and I don't know if you're a fan of the books or not, but some of the themes remind me a bit of the Dresden Files,
Mm-hmm.
in as much as like they're just trying to survive and live their life, and yet grand things keep happening to them anyway. And Dresden Files um, has powerful like demons trapped into various artifacts, specifically like the coins from the whole Christ story and all that.
Yes. I've dabbled a little bit with Dresden Files, but you reminding me of that tells me that I might have to go like dip back into that.
Okay.
But yeah, I've done a lot of research for this game. It's what we were talking about last time. Now that I've only got 3 games to run, I can spend more time on it, and I can be more deliberate, and I can plan a little bit better. I've talked to some people who really recommended the Steve Jackson game In Nomine, which came out at roughly the same time, but has very similar themes. So a lot of like demons versus devils, and like this kind of like what if demons and devils like lived on Earth and had to, reckon with all of that. And going through some of those books, I was really pleasantly surprised that they used a lot of artists that I was really fond of in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's been a blast looking through all of that.
Fun. And then your third game.
So that would be Break, and I'm just now preparing for it. I got to run Break for about, I want to say 10 sessions, because the first time we played Break, and if nobody knows, it's there's been this trend lately, I guess is the best way I would say it, of being like, we're going to make a game that's inspired by Legend of Zelda and Miyazaki and like, the things you remember from the late 90s or what have you. And I think Break was the first game like that made it out to the market. There's been a couple of other games that have come out with that kind of visual aesthetic and being like, this is meant to be like the video games of your youth. But Break really caught my attention when it came out, and I did the Kickstarter, and I've got the book, which I could show you. But the artwork is fantastic. The art direction is really great. I ran my first game of Break because one of my buddies had started to run it, and I could kind of tell that he wasn't really feeling it. Like, we got about 3 sessions in, and he was like, hey, I'm kind of like running on fumes here. I don't know what to do. And I said, do you want me to take over? Because the whole premise is like, hey, let me run a game, and then you get to play. And I'm like, oh, I'd like to try that. But it didn't work out. And I said, hey, maybe I just take over again, and I run the rest of this game. And he was like, yeah, that'd be great. And I'm like, okay, sure, fine. And so I ran the remainder of that game and had a blast, but I never really felt like it was mine because I didn't get to start it. And it was with this same group. And so we finished Daggerheart. I've been playing, actually had a blast with it. And I had this idea. I did my survey and I did some options, but partway into writing up the options, one of my players was like, hey, could we play Break? And I'm like, I'll put it on the list and see if people gravitate towards it. And everybody voted for Break. Now that I have my brain wrapped around Break a little bit better, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from some of the anime that has come out lately that's been like really cozy. If you've heard of any of it, like Delicious in Dungeon and Free Ren. But the premise of this game is going to be, there was a 100-year war, and it just concluded. And the group actually just has to take like this relic that was stolen by the enemy side. And so they're deep into enemy territory because they just finished fighting this war. So their leadership is like, hey, grab that relic that was stolen and bring it home. And the whole premise is like, if you've ever read the Belgariad, so much of the story is like, we're just going to travel and like live in the setting and kind of really experience the characters. And that's what I'm going to do. It's not going to be like, oh no, we got to go and fight like the big evil boss, or there's like this terrible conspiracy. It's more like this slow burn story about like going through this war torn region and dealing with all of the things that happen in the aftermath of war. And I think I called it Wake Runners, but it's meant to be, and that's how the game runs. Like, it's not meant to be this like, oh, we're gonna level up to 20 and fight Asmodeus. It's more like we're just gonna like live day to day and kind of experience life. And I figured that was a really cool way to do it.
I assume, given the references, Free Run and Delicious in Dungeon and Legend of Zelda that you've made, I assume that it's intended to be for fantasy storytelling.
Yes, and it is a fantasy story. Like everyone, I said that everybody has to be a part of like this military unit, so they're going to be like soldiers and like quartermasters and things. I gave them a list. Like, these are things you can pick as your background. But that's the only requirement I have. I'm just like, you fought in the war and you were part of a unit, but you can be a wizard or you can be like a fighter. I think one of the classes in Break is Murder Princess. It's very quirky and silly. But so if anybody wanted to be one of those things, they absolutely could. But the requirement is you all fought in the war together, and that's the glue that binds them. They're all coming back from war. It's like I called it the reverse Private Ryan. Like, they're not going into war, they're like coming out of it, but they have a one last mission kind of thing.
Okay. The is there a lot of quirky classes? You talked about Murder Princess, though.
Murder Princess, yeah. Give me a second, because where did I put that dang book?
I only ask because Murder Princess comes off like the kind of class you would see show up in Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Absolutely.
So
100%. Let me just bring this up super quick, because I've been looking through everything lately. And so there's Factotum, Sneak, Champion, Raider, Battle Princess, Murder Princess, Sage, and Heretic. And those are the classes. There've been some others released in like blog format. Like, if anybody looks up the Break RPG, they have like 100 blog articles, and probably half of them introduce more material, which is a little frustrating because I wish it was in a book. I think they just did a Kickstarter that might have compiled some of that, but it's really fun because it really jars you out of the sense of like a D&D campaign where it's like you have to be X, Y, or Z. This is more like, try and do something that's really weird. The Battle Princess is very much like a magical girl type, where you're meant to be like very, like, you wear ribbons and like your attacks have sparkles. But then the Murder Princess is like, you leave like death and destruction in your wake.
Okay. That's interesting. It's interesting that there's two different princess classes.
Yes. And I think they explicitly said too that that you could be a guy battle princess if you really wanted to, not
Sure.
being exclusionary.
Yeah, stop me.
So that's the game that I would be running on Sundays. I think I talked about all of my games already.
So that game hasn't started yet then?
No, both the Japan game and the Break game, the Wake Runners, will start when I come back.
The Japan game hasn't started yet either.
It's not. We've talked a lot about it, and we've done like character creation.
I feel like we've talked about it on here.
Yes, yeah. We have. And so like it's been we talked about it before we even did the Werewolf Wild West, but we were just in so much flux. There were other people getting married and people just busy, so we were like, okay, we're going to do this side game for a minute, get ourselves back. I'm going to do my vacation, and then when we're all kind of, solid on schedules, and we can start, because otherwise we would have been in such a fit and start, and that's not a great way to start a campaign. In my experience.
Right. So do you have a story set for what the Japan game is going to be about?
Yes, actually. And so that one is going to happen before I think the Tokugawa government comes into power, and I think there's like there's like a giant battle that happens. This is historical Japan, that Tokugawa wins, and then that government comes into place, and that's like it goes from Edo Japan to Tokugawa, and then Tokugawa goes for like some hundreds of years before the Meiji government and so on. But anyways, this is like 1600s Japan, and so that would be one thing. But then I'm introducing this supernatural element where I have this like evil Oni king that is he kind of sees the future, and he understands that there's this westernization that's going to happen, and he doesn't want that. And so he's trying to influence the history, like the kind of the proceedings of histories in his favor. He wants to keep things isolationist. He wants the powers to be beholden to him. And so the group is really going to have to navigate, you know, do they want to skew traditionalist and be on the side of the Oni King, or do they want to skew like modernist and be on the side of, you know, the powers that be, that want to open Japan up to you know, the outside world, that want it to become more modern, that want to maybe even abolish the kind of the feudal system in place. And it could go either way. I'm not putting it there to be like, oh, this is going to happen one way. I'm putting both choices there so that they can decide, you know, are we going to go this way, or are we going to go that way? Are we going to go with the supernatural, or are we going to go with history? And I think that'll be interesting. And not even all of the players might agree, and there might be some fun to be had there.
It sounds like that. I mean, that could be depending on how they go, it could be your most grounded game, and that it could just be based on real world history, and they're not, you know, angels and demons running around or any of that kind of stuff. They're just
Right.
people in Japan.
Exactly. And then ironically, if they choose the demon side, if they choose the Oni side, I mean, it might be the most boring game, because then they're going to be going out and fighting in Japanese, like historical Japanese wars against the government, instead of like going out and fighting like monsters and dragons and so on.
And then you go back to old school gaming, and you put away the TTRPG, and you play a miniature battle simulation game, and you go. I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff out there to run, you know, historical simulations
Oh
of
yeah.
Japanese battles.
I just print out and staple together some copies of Chainmail and mail them to all of my players.
Perfect.
Yeah, so those are my games. You know, I feel like I'm taking up more time on each game than I did before, because before I'm like, okay, here's Monday, here's Tuesday,
Yep.
but yeah, I'm kind of letting them breathe a little bit more, and I'm finding a lot of value in that.
I'm on. It's not my time yet, but I'm on my summer break right now as a professor, and so I've to make sure I'm productive with my time, I give myself an hour of different sort of categories of things to do during the day. You know, I give myself an hour of actually doing work, even though it's, you know, it's summer. You can't be an educator and not do unpaid work over the summer. It's just part of the
Mm-hmm.
job, I guess, part of the expectations.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, but one of the things I have on there is just D&D. I spend an hour a day just doing D&D stuff, and I am basically, because I'm running published adventures with modifications, of course. I'm just copying and pasting and putting the entire text and images and everything of the chapters into a Google Doc and then editing it. So then when I run, I'm not actually referencing the original document. I've rewritten like the box text and that kind of stuff, and added in
Beautiful.
to stuff about the characters and the things that I'm changing and all kinds of stuff. So, which I suppose we can switch over to my turn and talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Before we do, I want to let people know that if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/the Tome Show, and for as little as $1 a month, help us sort of pay the bills and do the things that we need to do to make the show possible. I've recently upgraded my microphone situation. We're doing the stream, which is being, you know, as a paid service. So all of those things, plus of course the normal hosting that we pay for. So any support you can give, we appreciate. So, as you may recall from last month and before, I am running a Spelljammer campaign. It is basically the Light of Xerxes campaign that came with the fifth edition Spelljammer box set. They also released a on D&D Beyond lead-in adventure called Spelljammer Academy, where they're basically going to an academy in the Forgotten Realms and as young, inexperienced spelljammers and learning how spelljammer works. And then of course, the characters are learning at the same time that the players are learning, and sort of introducing a few concepts along the way. And it's quick leveling. I think by the end of it, they're fourth or fifth level, which is what you need to be to start Light of Xerxes. And you just sort of level up after every session. It goes really fast. Um, since the last time we've recorded, I've finished Spelljammer Academy, and we are through the first section of the first part, I guess, of Light of Xerxes into the second part. The first part is largely hey, you're hanging out in our case, Neverwinter, and suddenly these large yellow crystals fall from the sky and erupt from the ground and become giant, like 1,000-foot high crystal vines that sort of twist and what they eventually learn are the vines are getting deep seated into the planet. They're all over the planet, and they're draining all the sort of life energy and heat out of the planet. And when it's done, it'll beam all of that to the dying sun of the Empire of Xerxes to reignite it, and that the Empire just sort of does this over and over again as their sun starts to die again, destroying worlds in the process. They escape with the help of Captain Sartell of the Moon Dancer, who was, of course, a spelljamming galleon. So it just looks like a normal ship that happened to be in the harbor at Neverwinter. But she knew them because I had her. I tweaked some things from Spelljammer Academy. There's an adventure where they take a derelict beholder ship and infiltrate a beholder planet, steal an adamantine meteor that the beholders don't know about yet, and sneak back away on it. And then they're supposed to like kind of get attacked. It's sort of the meta arc of Spelljammer Academy. They get attacked on the way back or whatever. I had the attack be a two-pronged attack. So while they were dealing with the obvious threat, another member of that organization was sneaking into and damaging their helm. Which meant that their beholder ship that they were flying back to the Forgotten Realms could no longer function. It couldn't move. So they were derelict, and I had Captain Sartell and the Moon Dancer come in and rescue them as somebody who kind of knew the faculty at Spelljammer Academy and saw that they were derelict there and came and saved the day. So they already kind of knew Captain Sartell, instead of her just being a complete random, like, hey, you look like cool people, let me rescue you, and that worked out well. So they had this connection to Captain Sartell. Everybody always likes Flapjack, sort of the first mate of the Moon Dancer, who is a flump that wears like a pirate hat, with the big feather on it and everything. They escape. They sort of beat back a local crime boss who was trying to muscle his way onto the ship and take it over to save him and his cargo, but then that would leave no space for the refugees. So they put a stop to that, and they save 20 refugees along the way. And Captain Sartell takes off. They run into a patrol ship, a Xerexian Empire Star Moth ship that was sort of patrolling the area around the planet. They beat them away, and then escape off to the asteroid city called the Rock of Brawl, which has been ported over from the old second edition Spelljammer. And so at the Rock of Brawl, Captain Sartell's like, so, I mean, go save your planet. That's important, but this is not my fight. Like, I rescued you all. I like you all, but I'm not like putting myself in the middle of your big quest to take on the entire Xerexian Empire. That's just that's not what I'm going to be doing here. So she wishes them well and points them in the direction of Commodore Crux, the GIF captain of the second chance, the second wind, I'm pretty sure. Um, except that Commodore Crux has so as written, the Commodore Crux is waiting at the happy beholder, kind of depressed, drinking way too much, whatever. I implemented a product that I picked up on DM's Guild that adds a little extra side quest to get Commodore Crux called Saving Crux, um, wherein they show up at the Happy Beholder and Crux isn't there. And in fact, Luigi, the Happy Beholder himself that runs the place, hasn't seen Crux in a while and he's worried. And so they do a little bit of digging and investigation, and they find out that the last time his ship went out under the command of Fel Adra, the tiefling who's been sort of renting the ship for a while, um, they went out and there were some illicit alchemical reagents, and Commodore found out about these and that they were dangerous and threw them overboard. And that got him in trouble with the gang that wanted them. And so he's been taken by that gang who need to make an example of him. And of course, it is a gang made up entirely of plasmoids called the Amoebros. So, what's that?
Fantastic.
Right. No, it's a super corny name, and my players kind of loved it. They were like, "Wait, is that in the actual book? Is the Amoebros a thing that Wizards of the Coast published?" I'm like, "Well, it's a thing that somebody published. Like, I didn't make that up. I'm not going to take credit for it. Somebody else came up with that hilarious idea." So they went into in our last session. They were infiltrating the Amoebros headquarters or lair, hideout, whatever, and it's all very Spelljammer Mafia coded. At one point, they run into the big boss, whose name is Ripples. Um, they run into his nana. I don't know if in Italian parlance if that means grandmother or mother. But they run into Nona J, and they just absolutely adored her. And she's like, "Oh, that my old Rippleford is probably getting himself into trouble. Please don't don't hold it against him too badly, whatever." And so they made their way into the final room with the big boss fight to take him on, and they had previously found a scroll of Wall of Force, and so when the battle started, they just trapped him inside of a dome of a Wall of Force, took out all the people, other people in the room, and then we're like, "So look, here's the deal. You're going to knock this stuff off. We're going to take Crux with us. He's safe now. We're going to free all your other prisoners. They're safe now. We've wiped out like 90% of your gang, but you're going to knock this kind of stuff off. And the only reason you're not dead is because we love Nona J."
Beautiful.
And she asked us not to kill you. So so they rescued Commodore Crux and took him off back to a ship where where they're like, "So here's the deal. We were told to find you because you've scrapped with the Empire of Xerxes before, and our planet has been seeded with these astral seeds, and we understand it's gonna be destroyed, and we're trying to stop it." And he's like, "No, don't say any more. I'm in. Let's do this thing. Like, anything to give the Empire a black eye." He has a history with the Empire they don't know about yet, but clearly he has a history with the Empire and he doesn't like him, and he's ready to punch him in the eye. At which point, Fel Adra, the tiefling who's rented the ship, comes out and says, "Hey, we have a contract, and I've already paid for 40 days. Like, the ship is mine right now, and I don't have any interest in this quest." So that's where we ended last session. The Light of Xerxes adventure is written in such a way that there's 3 chapters per part, and I want to say like 5 parts, and you level up at the end of every part, and each chapter is written so that you're supposed to be able to play it in its entirety in one session. I kind of blew up this chapter because the Rock of Brawl is like this thoroughly developed and interesting place. It's really going to be the only like opportunity to visit a city in the entire campaign, and so I'm like, hey, let's expand this out and give us some time and give us some room to breathe and explore some things and do some interesting character development things and all this kind of stuff. It's the one session on the Rock of Brawl is going to be probably 3 sessions. One session of finding the hideout, one session of going through the hideout, and now one session sort of afterwards. Um, I've tweaked a lot with it. Like I said, I've added a lot. So every single character I've created sort of a custom little thing I've done to sort of play into who I know they are as players, but also make them important as characters. Um, so, for example, Blue, the Plasmoid Paladin, he's a paladin of Timora, a goddess of good luck. He found a book that is it's called The Gambler's Guide to Wild Space. It's been written by dozens of different adventurers over the years has been passed down to from person to person, and it has a little mechanical benefit. I put in like 3 different maneuvers. And once per day or whatever, he can do one of these maneuvers, and he can choose at the beginning of each day which one he's going to prepare and whatever. And then for going around my table, for Q, the Thrycreen Druid, um, they built into their sort of backstory that their name means like the 9th tier of Selûne. They're not from Toril. Selûne is the moon in the Forgotten Realms, and it's been shattered, and so there's these asteroids that trail behind it called the Tears of Selûne. His name is the 9th tier of Selûne, and so he's like, oh, I should go check out Toril, and that's where he sort of lived for a while before joining the academy and whatever. The first time he went into space and saw Selûne, which was in the adventure in the campaign, his eyes went black and were filled with the stars, and so I've got this whole little like prophecy thing that he can see things in space that other people can't see, and all that kind of stuff. Like he's got in his backstory, one of the prompts I gave him is that, hey, somebody in this group saw something moving in the stars that shouldn't have been moving. Who was it, and who else in the party like believed you, and so that was one of the prompts. So I've tied that into this whole like idea that his eyes have changed. He's got this connection, and so one of the things I did in the Rock of Brawl is he found what I called a scent map. Basically, his people, the Thrycreen, create star charts, but they use scent coding as much as they use visual images. So the map doesn't make sense to anybody else, but as a Thrycreen, he can read the scents in it, and he can actually tell that this is telling the story of his people were originally on Selûne, on that 9th star, and this is the star chart that took them from there as refugees to the planet where he grew up. And so I'm building the sort of story that he was there, and maybe he was his people, not he was there, but his people were there originally and were part of like the experiments being done by the Xerxes Empire, and maybe that's why he's able to see things, because he's seeing like the auras and the energy that they're manipulating for all of their machinations or whatever, because he's got this heritage connection to that. We have Gulp. Gulp is an awakened goldfish in a fishbowl embedded into a robot body, being run as a warforged. Artificer, and she as her that Gulp's player is really into like corvids, ravens, and crows and that kind of stuff, and so I decided to facilitate that desire. And she's also tried to have pets in like every campaign that we've run in the last 7 years, and it never quite works out. Like, how do you tame an abyssal chicken? It doesn't work. So I gave her part of her story is that her mentor has gone missing. It turns out her mentor has gone missing because he found out what the Xerexian Empire was doing and was out investigating. But left behind a clockwork corvid that she named Edgar, because of course she did. And that corvid not only has some like familiar like abilities, but also occasionally when the story moments hit right, like it activates a recording in the corvid that is her mentor leaving messages about what he's been doing and what's been going on. We have Gabriel, the human wizard, the most normal of the bunch, whose grandfather helped found Spelljammer Academy 100 years ago, and passed down to him what I'm calling the Cinder Compass. This is a player who's always wanted to have a pet hellhound. Uh, Kind of pulled it off for about 3 sessions in Descent into Avernus, but it just didn't really last. And so I put a bound hellhound into a compass. And it has some minor sort of magical abilities and whatever, but more interestingly, and they just found it on the Rock of Brawl, it is connected to a small, like 2-person mini Spelljammer that the salvage yard owner that has it, who is a Doar, they're like the little penguin people. He's like, this thing's a hunk of junk, it barely moves. And then he found a slot where he could actually slide the compass into it. And then the compass powers it and it roars to life. And I kind of modeled it a little bit off of the Hangman from Dimension 20 and a little bit off of like Lobo's Space Bike from DC Comics. And so that's he's just acquired that and hasn't really explored it much. But when he does, he'll discover that it was at one point also in the possession of his grandfather, and his grandfather has a journal hidden inside of it. And then lastly, we have Barlow, the GIF monk, who the player's really into like classic rock and whatever, and all of his characters are named after classic rock musicians or whatever. He just straight up had a character in Wild Beyond the Witchlight whose name was Jethro Tull. You know?
I love it.
Yeah. So Barlow, part of his backstory was he turned down an opportunity when he was young to go on to join a crew and go on a mission to recover a legendary artifact called the Stratocaster. So in Spelljammer Academy, they found out what happened to that crew that found the Stratocaster, and they were destroyed by the Beholders that were on the derelict ship, and he found the Stratocaster that remaining there, and it, like the vibrations of the artifact and the vibrations of his key sort of triggered off of each other, and it shattered and released a spirit that was bound into it, and it's the spirit of an elf from the Xerixian Empire who saw the corruption of the Emperor and tried to thwart it, and was killed for that, and was bound into this instrument, which I turned it into a sitar instead of a electric guitar or whatever. Mm-hmm. And now that spirit has bound itself into him, and so all of these things I keep playing in, like sprinkling in throughout the story, and then I've worked out at the very end of the campaign, there's this part where they can choose at one point, like, do we just let the Xerixian Empire do their thing and save their world but destroy ours, or do we stop them by destroying their star and destroying their entire civilization? And the idea as written is that somebody's got to basically sacrifice themselves and fly into the star and sacrifice themselves in order to trigger the explosion that'll destroy it. And I've come up with a concoction of abilities from each of these 5 different customized things that will allow them, if they work in tandem, to get in there, destroy the star, and then ride the shockwave out very sort of pulp style, because it's supposed to be it's trying to do sort of Flash Gordon style pulp storytelling with this adventure. Yes. So that's what's going on. And it's some of the customizations that I've made. Coming up, I've tweaked a little bit. So as written, when they've rescued Commodore Crux, they're walking through the city with him, and they're attacked by some astral elves who are getting revenge for the star moth that they destroyed early on in the campaign. I tweaked it a little bit since I had them rescue all these refugees. I've detailed who all the refugees are. They've interacted with some of them and shown some interest in some of them, whatever. But the refugees, 3 of the refugees are former like employees of a tavern, and they've commandeered some of the captain's wine, and they're going to throw everybody's depressed, morale is low. We're going to throw a party to celebrate that we survived. And so now that so I'm going to have them go there. And that's where the astral elves are going to attack instead of just randomly on the street. And like one of the refugees is a a former guard who feels guilty about having abandoned his post at Neverwinter and gone with them to save himself. And so he's sort of taken it on himself to constantly be guarding everybody. And so he's going to sort of do the self-sacrifice thing and die in the process. And then one of the other refugees is a member of that like gang that tried to take over the ship. That like as soon as it was clear that what his boss was doing, he switched sides and sort of hid amongst the refugees. And so he's going to, try to redeem himself by joining the party to fight against the Astral Elves, and so I've done all these little tweaks and things to the story in that way. And then after that, they're going to go hop into space and possibly get taken out by it's a species called a Rhaegar or Rygar, and they're powerful foes on their own, but it's writing an aesthetic which is basically a giant space jellyfish. The giant space jellyfish, like their level, I don't know, 5 at this point, 6 maybe. The Rygar is like CR7 and the space jellyfish is CR12. Like they can't beat this jellyfish. Like it's going to destroy the ship, right? And there's potential that it could destroy the ship. And as written, that means that we might get the opportunity to meet the Kindori, which are space whales, because you can sort of hitch a ride on the backs of some space whales to back to civilization, where you can get help again. So we'll see what happens as we go forward, but that's sort of where we're at with my current campaign. And then I've got 500 other campaigns in my head now, and I've been talking on the Discord a little bit that I've recently cataloged every adventure that I own.
Yes.
So anthology adventures, some of them are single encounter adventures, some of them are full, 1 to 12 or 12 to 20 campaigns. So they're all sizes, whatever. But I wanted to like have a spreadsheet of every adventure that I own. It's like 501 or 502 adventures. It's a lot. That I own.
503 because one adventure was cataloging all of that.
I suppose. Yeah, no, I think there's actually 503 entries in the spreadsheet, but one of them is the titles at the top, So, yeah, no, it was an adventure. So now it's like, okay, I've categorized them by level, so I can sort by level, and start to be like, okay, let's see how this adventure can tie to this adventure and can tie to this adventure, and like I can build a whole campaign out of that, and figure out what's the themes that are going to connect this random like one level adventure and this one shot over here, and and see how I can cobble all those together now that I've got them all laid out like that. So yeah, I think that on top of the other like literally 5 different campaigns that I have in my head ready to go. So
I think once upon a time, I remember my friends in the 90s and the early 2000s were really into coding, and they would code these like random generators. So you could probably, they would have input all of the titles and put them into a random generator and be like, okay, string together these 5 adventures, go. And that would be its own kind of like way to approach that. But it sounds like you've got so much to work with. I don't know how you don't have analysis paralysis from that.
Yeah, no. And you were talking about like your friends might code ways to do that. These days, you don't even take the time to do that. You feed those adventures into an AI and say, hey, how can I string these together and get some ideas, or which of these have similar themes that I could tie together, or whatever. But like I said, I have a Vidari campaign in my head. I have a Homebrew World with 2 different campaigns that run out of it in my head. I have a Forgotten Realms campaign in my head that I've started spelling out that ties in the spell weavers and the creator races that created a bunch of the races of the Forgotten Realms, and will also ultimately explain. And this is where this came from, was WotC never really explained what all the obelisks were. Let's create a campaign that does that, and because that's what I think Eve of Ruin was supposed to do, from some of the interviews you've seen from Chris Perkins and whatever, is that Eve of Ruin was supposed to be sort of this capstone that tied everything together and explained the obelisks and did all that kind of stuff. And then he left and it didn't do that. the people that took over the leadership of it went a different direction. Some of which is an interesting direction because you've got a Vecna themed campaign that doesn't include like the eye or the hand. So,
Yep.
although my running of it, because that I know that'll be the next campaign. My running of it will include the eye in the hand because I have a player that currently has the eye in his head, in one of his characters' heads, and we've met the NPC in Descent into Avernus who has the hand. So the eye and the hand have come into sort of our meta
Yes.
narrative, our setting. So.
No, I like the through line of that because you were definitely saying you were setting this game up to be like a middle piece to that. And I think that'll be really cool to do. I guess it would end up being a trilogy at that point, right?
Well, it'll be a bunch. So the first campaign was Dragon Heist, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and Curse of Strahd. And then I pulled a bunch of stuff from Tomb of Annihilation and Rime of the Frost Maiden and a bunch of homebrew stuff for that campaign. And then we ran Descent into Avernus. Then we ran Wild Beyond the Witchlight, Phandelver and Below, and now Light of Xerxes, and they're all sort of in a shared setting, and they're all connected to each other. And they're, ultimately Vecna is the manipulator behind all of them that caused all of the campaign, all the other campaigns that happen. And so I'm envisioning Eve of Ruin when I get to it. I'll do a lot more modification. I don't run anything, of course, without modifying heavily. I run a lot of published adventures these days, but I also modify like the majority of the adventures that I run. And so Eve of Ruin is sort of the Avengers Endgame of my cinematic universe. So
beautiful.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, hey, so far so good. It sounds like you've been running a stellar, pun partially intended, campaign, and it like you're drawing in so many elements from previous games that I think you've really refined the like what makes this character special. How do they get drawn into the story? And I think it sounds like it's going really well this time around versus last time. I think there was maybe some question about like how effective is this, or people like really paying attention. It sounds like this time everybody's bought in.
Yeah, well, and like I don't know. You can go to that well of like, let's give everybody a unique custom thing every so often. But if you do that every campaign, it becomes tired. It becomes corny. So like I wouldn't have wanted to do that on every campaign, but this time I was like, you know what? They all need something special. I need to make sure that they're hooked into all of this.
I also didn't want to let this go. This has been in my head ever since you mentioned it. Luigi, the Happy Beholder.
Yeah.
He has a giant mustache, right?
He doesn't, but I listen. So I oftentimes, when I run published adventures, one of the things I'll do is I'll find somebody who's podcasting, who's released a podcast of running that campaign. And I found one for Light of Xerxes that's pretty decent. And a lot of times I'll get some inspiration. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, I like the way they depicted that, or I don't like the way they did that, or they tweaked that here, and I get some ideas from whatever. One of the things they did, so Luigi the Happy Beholder has a pet parrot that he sort of lends out to Commodore Crux when they're supposed to find him in the tavern, to sort of lift his spirits or whatever, right? And sort of beholders are kind of reddish, and the parrot is green. So I took from them that the parrot's name is Mario. So Mario is the green parrot, and Luigi is the red beholder.
Beautiful.
Yeah. No.
Beautiful.
Yeah. No, it worked out well. And then you ask, can the parrot say anything? Yeah, just it's a me. That's it.
It's all it has to say. Really.
That's all it has to say. So,
I do have I just took some notes here. Well, that's just one note that says Farscape Voyager, but the way that you're running this game really reminds me of like that late 90s, early 2000s. I think I've said that phrase like 8 times already, of like Farscape Voyager, episodic, but like impactful sci-fi stories. And so, it sounds really cool. It sounds like the kind of game I would really dig.
Yeah, it definitely like, as I'm looking at the way the story is constructed, I'm like, oh, I can see where they're definitely pulling from classic sort of pulp novels, John Carter of Mars and Flash Gordon we mentioned. Like I can hear the Queen soundtrack in my head sometimes when I'm doing the prep or whatever. And every now and then, because I'm throwing in all this extra material, like I use Sirenscape for background music and whatever sound effects when we're playing. And they have the adventure in there, and so there's a little section for every chapter or whatever. But I'm throwing in all this extra stuff. I don't have any soundscapes or whatever that would really fit for some of those. So I don't know if you remember when the Spelljammer box set came out, they also released an album.
Yes.
And so whenever I don't have a good soundscape, I just put on whatever the next song on the playlist is from the album, and we just, whatever it is, whether it meets, fits the situation or not, we just listen to that slowly but surely.
Fantastic.
No, it's been fun. So that's my game. And that's Ish's 3 games. And I think that's going to be our episode. I don't know how long we are because I don't know when I hit record, but we've been recording for about an hour, so it's probably about that, close to that length. So that's a good time to stop.
I think between 2 people, we hit the time a lot better.
Well,
we don't.
I took my time to go into a lot more depth on some things that I otherwise wouldn't have done if we had 3 people. So that worked out well.
Yeah.
And I made sure, like, you had gone through your 3 games at about 15 minutes in. I'm like, hey, let's dig into more. Tell me about your stories. What are you doing with these session zeros or whatever? So it worked out well. It's nice to sometimes just have a small group of for the episode so we can dig in a little deeper. So
definitely.
And hopefully the listeners enjoy that because they can take this information about what we're doing in their games and carry it forward when we talk about what's going on later on. So we're going to call that the end of this episode. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you want to find other great Tome Show shows, go to thetomeshow.com. If you want to follow us on the various social medias, I am Squatch, Squach, on most of the social medias. And if you tag me in something, I'll probably notice it and come seeing who's talking about me. So, Ish, you are Elven Wizard King pretty much everywhere these days.
Correct.
And both of us can most easily be found probably over at the Tome Show Discord, where we've got a nice little community of people who have good, fun conversations pretty much every day. So go hang out with us over there. All right. I think that's the end of the episode. So say goodbye, guy.
Goodbye, guy.